Oh my God, guys, what a show we have lined up for you. Looks good, right?
Yeah, it looks nice.
Special,
Looks
different,
nice.
Hitchcock. Snake moon.
No.
No. Snake year, rabbit moon.
Rabbit moon, Earth rabbit moon. Second moon
Of spring.
of spring.
Yeah.
Yeah. Last after this moon, we start to transition to summer. So this is all about like checking in.
Yeah. Spring's almost already done. I'm halfway through at this point. Literally.
Almost, yeah. The spring, the equinox is, a week from tomorrow. Yeah.
Okay. Enjoy the show. Today's offering is brought to you by Pure Land Tea. We'll be drinking a variety of lotus mixed with a Big Snow Mountain brick. These are both from the Master Wong collection, and I did about a 50-50 split on these. We're using angry boiling water in our I Ching clay pot, and those are the flavors that are going to be gracing us today. So this is a special moon. First and foremost, it's Ramadan. Second, yeah, Ramadan Kareem. And then second, it all started with that crazy planetary alignment. We had like 7 planets all in one line the day of the new moon.
Right.
And then here we are right at the full moon, and it's
and then we get the blood moon.
The blood lunar eclipse.
Right.
Crazy, right?
Right. And of course in the bay we can't see.
You just know.
Yeah, but it's there. But of course, that's, as we've talked about many times, like it's actually not important to see it. These big astronomical phenomenon, not, from this particular cosmology standpoint, it's actually not important to go stick your face in it.
As I stick my face in this pour. Well, special, it's spring, but it's cold here in the Bay. We had big storms, big, wet, and windy. And so I made some pozole for us to eat. It was really delicious. Seafood can cook. And then we're having some really rich puer right now. Fitting for the season, fitting for the climate, I suppose. Now, what I gather from snake, mystical, rabbit, psychic, you get the two together, and it's got to be like ultra mega super or something.
Right. Yeah. It's Molly every day. Yeah, discretion is the word, discretion. And I think that when you're talking about the second moon of any year, but particularly a snake year, which has this kind of like sensitivity and availability, already, we talked about what the wood snake is, being a relatively transparent, sort of borrowing, form, not really having anything. It's almost like reflecting your situation. Then it definitely underscores the importance, I would say, of building rapport with your environment, like building rapport with your ecosystem. The difficulty of discussing the second moon in our culture is that we conflate spring and summer. We think that the spring moon should be just as productive. They should be productive, because winter's over. It's time to get to work. So that's generally how we conceive of spring, but spring isn't productive.
Is a baby.
Spring is a promise.
Yeah.
It's basically a toddler.
Yeah.
Toddlers can maybe carry some groceries from time to time.
And as much as I want my little 3-year-old to get to work already, but no.
Yeah. You want to develop, you want to nurture, you want to cultivate, but, and I think one of the things that's very interesting about the second moon in particular is that when the young need to be educated, and the adults need to remember. And that's really what the second moon is all about, is this kind of juxtaposition of those who haven't yet been there, learning from those who have, and those who have been there, remembering what it's like to not be there, remembering what it's like to be clueless. And that's really the basis of the freshness that's available in the second moon, the kind of freshness that's really available. And that freshness is what ultimately makes you available to this notion that I would like to offer today, a discussion of essentially of Ganying, of this notion of resonance. And what makes you available to that is the remembrance that you really don't know.
Is it that time of year again? We're in the Ganyu time of year again.
Ganying basically starts in the 12th moon. You know, these discussions of Ganying that go all the way to you know, I would probably say to the snake moon, but for sure all the way into the dragon, because the dragon is essentially where you authenticate, right? So that then you can go forward, right? But the first and second moon, I mean, you should expect nothing from the first one. It's just like, you know, maybe trying different things and being spontaneous and getting a sense of like the container of your environment. But once you get a sense of that container of your environment, like what are we dealing with? The second moon is really how we develop that sense of trust with our environment and rapport, how we build rapport.
Well, I'm pointing out the Ganying this round because we're going on our 4th year of this round. It's fun.
Cheers.
Yeah. And you've talked about Ganying extensively a number of times. So you bring it up.
Is it time for Ganying? Well, that's what happens to me every time when I come out of winter. Then I'm reviewing the materials to talk about next year, and I'm kind of tired and it's like, oh, Ganying. Yeah. I mean, it's really interesting. There's not a lot that's written about Ganying. You know, if you look in the Huainanzi has the most. You can really find this like kind of an explication of what Ganying is, and it's translated as resonance, but that's not really it. It's like this sense of sympathetic heartbeat, you know, like a co-rhythm, you know, that really what you're talking about with Ganying is this co-rhythm. Like I know some people I know use this term co-creation, this sense of co-creation.
East Bay term.
Right, it's very Bay term, right? So, but that notion of like this sympathetic resonance and how we're able to kind of tap into that, you know, and cultivate that sense of relatedness, because it's really about these promptings of relatedness through this sort of ecosystem of Ganying, you know, because it's generally understood that the perfect example of Ganying that they always write about is that if I pluck a string in C flat, then anything that's tuned to C flat is going to vibrate. So that's a kind of understanding, a way of understanding Ganying, is that given the time and place, if I, you know, walk into a building and shout something funny, if I walk into the wrong house, it's not going to land, right? But if I walk into the right house with other friends, even though the facade looks the exact same and the door was open and I just walked in, right? So there's comedic timing that comes with these things. So there's so many different ways of describing it, and the reality is nobody really knows what's happening, right? You know, when it comes to spring, nobody has any clue, and that's the most important thing to remember, is that you don't really know. But in the relaxing of the knowing and kind of working sort of intuitively, rabbits are known for that intuitive capacity, then you have a level of openness and you develop a level of openness and relatedness that then leads you to something that is referred to as a premonition. And you can't really authenticate a premonition, you can only just play with it, you know, kind of go forward, right? But we still need this, we still need to appeal to tradition and convention to kind of ground ourselves, you know, in the everyday. Like from a farming perspective, we're still using stored food. We're not harvesting anything fresh. So we're still kind of gradually bringing ourselves along. Yang, this relationship between yang and yin, it may have come up out of the ground and is growing, but it's nowhere near strong, right? So you can't really get anything from the sprout. You know, if you cut it now, you won't get everything you're really looking for. So it's not very strong. Yang isn't strong to kind of to push potential. And there's tons of potential. Old yin has, as they say, has rolled up to heaven, right? And yang is coming up out of the ground. So it's been buried and now it's emerging. But it's very delicate. So there has to be this courtship between a new yin, right? Old yin is gone, but new yin is emerging. And new yin is essentially all the potential that new yang wants to engage with. So there's this loose courtship, but it's kind of like, kids on a playground. Two 6-year-olds, they're nervous around each other, but eventually maybe they hold hands, right? And then, like, my favorite Ming would say is that, like, it's like a 6-year-old saying, like, I have a girlfriend, like, yeah, okay, whatever. not really. But like, no, Susie is my girlfriend, like, and so there could be some very strong inspired enthusiasm that's coming forward. But essentially, the most important thing to understand about for most of the second moon is it's generally always half-baked, right? It's not until you really get to the equinox, which is about 8 days from now, that you really start.
That's right.
It's right around the corner.
This was a fact. Wow.
Yeah. So you have this kind of theoretical understanding that yang is eventually going to rise up, and then you have this space and time where things start to wiggle, right? And like yang is like, I'm coming. No, really, and like, so there's this kind of wiggly period that we're in still, and then that'll take you all the way to the equinox, and then at the equinox, then you have this conjoining moment, right? It happens 4 times a year. This is like very important pivot that happens with regards to spring equinox. There's this sense of so-called equality, but it's more like balance. But it's really just, and it's also this recognition that one is yang is headed this direction and yin is headed that direction. So at this particular moment, there's this transition where this is where you move forward with your inspiration. This is where, like, you should kind of apply yourself, exercise, move, and that happens at the equinox. But until then, we're kind of like, in this in-between space, right? Spring is in between. Oh yeah, please.
Qigong for that. Today's Qigong move is. All right, for today's Qigong, we have a movement that illustrates this kind of transient nature of spring that we're going through and the flavor of yin and yang going in separate directions, as Seanan had mentioned. The movement starts with a prayer poem. It's almost like the feeling of winter, the peaceful serenity of winter. And from here, as we transition into the movement of spring, consider that your prayer poem can split, right? We're going to pivot right here on the heel of our palm. And this kind of tells the story of yin going one way and yang going the other way. And we can kind of spin on this point, and that movement makes the plum blossom flower, right? And lots of beautiful applications for this movement, martially, medicinally. However, for today, we're talking about this movement in its small expression for spring, and we're going to gradually grow into bigger expressions where now I can turn my body and reach all the way out with my arms, and then I can grow into even bigger expressions where I now use my footwork and stances to get my whole body behind these plum blossom patterns.
And so there is a kind of impulsiveness that comes with this particular time period that, there shouldn't assign it a ton of discipline right away. Should allow yourself to kind of swing your arms about, just kind of get loose, be a goof, I think Bing would say, like, just goof off, like, don't worry about like fulfillment or productivity. Like, we're very aggressive in our society. We're way too concerned with like the objective or productivity of our actions, when this is the time where we're supposed to let all of those sort of the notions of our skillfulness, like, just let them go. and experiment, just play for no good reason. For instance, this is a really funny experience for me. I tell people about it and they go, okay. But I was watching a ton of YouTube videos on math. I'm not very good at math, but I was just like very curious, like, how is math done? Like, how do people do, what do these things mean? Like what? And like, I couldn't say that I got any smarter watching it, but I was just curious, like, tell me how math works now, because I think math works differently than when I was studying it and when I was actually good at it. I think it's actually much different now because it's a language, right? And it develops over time. So
math is incredible.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with like Math and Magic and the sacred
No,
calculation
no,
sutras?
like, no, I can't pretend.
I can't either.
Yeah.
I have a share. I actually have Chinese blood. Like I should be way better.
But the point was, like, watch things that you're not good at, like, like really actually take an interest in something you couldn't possibly get good at it, just that's what you should look at. And you just kind of be curious about it, spend some time with it, move on. It's like going for a walk for no particular reason. Just kind of move things around.
They call it a mosey.
Right. Want a meander. Great tea.
Well, Master Wong Collection, shout out Pure Land Teas, purelandtea.org. This is, I already said it, I'm gonna say it again. Big Snow Mountain and Lotus blend 50/50. Get some angry boiling water. I hope that the boiling water didn't really impact audio. So.
All right. I don't think so.
Yeah, even if it does.
Boiling water just brings you into the action. You're at the table with us.
I'm leaning into our human imperfections. It's as digital AI and all these things are coming out perfect.
Right.
Hey, grow with us, make mistakes with us.
And that's how you make friends, right? You recognize each other's flaws and predilections, and you develop resonance, then you right? You develop a sense of relatedness and build trust with an alliance. One of those things is kind of, recognizing each other's foibles and being like, my bad, and they go, I do that all the time, and then you're instant friends, right? So this is the time of year when everyone should be open to like kind of cultivating that sense of vulnerability. Trouble is, we're in Earth Rabbit moon. So the Earth Rabbit is a little bit handicapped in that in the development of that, because like the Earth Tiger, it's actually very concerned with power. Who has it, who doesn't, it's keeping track. It's Earth Rabbit Chi is kind of scheming, like all the time, right? So we might have this kind of distrustful, or like only doing things to our advantage, right? So we have to recognize those feelings within ourselves, and then also work through that stuff, right? It doesn't stop you, from actually being generous with other people and developing trust. However, there may be some kind of roadblocks. You might be a little bit more selective about who it is who you share that kind of intimacy with, and you may actually, that might be demonstrated like by sharing your intimacy with the wrong people, right? And then you have them that actually come back to bite you. So all of those things are kind of available in an Earth Rabbit moon, where there's a little bit of opportunism, that's available in that particular situation. But again, and that's why in a wood snake, year, this notion of discretion is so important, because transparency comes through whether you're super generous or super schemy, right? Both of those things actually, it's hard to hide. I was on the ride here, it's like, thinking about that Eagles song, like, you can't hide your lying eyes. And like, that's also kind of the juicy bit of, what's available in the second moon, is this, you should do the Confucian thing and like, put your best foot forward and build solid, relationships filled with integrity. And also at the same time, everybody has these kind of sort of dark underbellies to why we have certain friends, or so that all of these things are you can get meta with that. And this is a good time of year to kind of really consider the sort of habitual relationships you have. So I don't think you should shy away from it. I don't think it should be one of those things that you treat on a moral, like a bad person. Actually, no, just look at it. Like all of those kinds of relationships that you may or may not have. Nobody I know is like that, of course. Nobody here watching this is like that, of course, but people.
Connie.
It's just to say that like everybody is perhaps, given the current political climate, in a state of shock and scarcity, like easily going toward places of scarcity. So Earth Rabbit Moon is going to really, really accentuate that. And that might result in a kind of bonding, experience for people, or it could, bring out the worst in people as well. I'm going to get mine. I'm not saying one's better than the other, I know what I would prefer, but it's just that there's going to be a spectrum of reaction to that, that comes with being in an Earth Rabbit Moon. A lot of anxiety, a lot of like obsessive over security, over, do I have enough water? Do I have enough money? Like all of those things, actually pretty intense. Yeah, I mean, spoiler alert, it doesn't get any better like going into the next moon, into the dragon, which is like that hard edge.
Dragon, snake, horse, we are up for a doozy.
I mean, we're about to go through the gauntlet, right? After this moon, we'll be going through the gauntlet of the next two moons. Yeah, it doesn't ease up. And as we said at the beginning, when we were talking about the wood snake year, is it this sense of transformation that was so ethereal with the dragon, very principled and almost abstract, right? This notion of great change. So yeah, I think abstract is a good word. Dreamy, right? When it actually starts to be implemented and actually starts to come down to earth, right? It's very visceral and uncomfortable. And so that's where we're in the second moon of that. I say there's 4 and then it will change, but then you'll feel like you have something you can do about it. But right now it's kind of like this very muddy, grindy, gristly kind of feeling, right? Grainy.
Yeah, it's almost like the agitation necessary before a big move.
So rabbit is the cultivation of our relatedness, and the difference between something like a premonition, developing a premonition of your aspiration. Right? So we're cultivating our aspirations. In spring, you're supposed to have as many as you can get. It's like just put it all out there. And then right away you lose about 25%, right? It's like, well, it's just kind of I'll put it on my vision board, but I'm actually focused on these, things. These are the times when we start to really visualize, right? The kinds of things that we would like to achieve, if we're thinking about achievement, or the kinds of things that are up for us, we start to get a frame. And in that frame, you're developing, this is what's called a premonition, of a dream that's kind of guiding us so that we're following the stream. So dreams aren't about forcefully making them manifest, right? Dreams are about something you follow, that you're guided by this kind of vision of where you want to go, who you want to be, this growth and transformation, that idea of reinvention. I don't like reinvention and refreshment of spring. It's not like rummaging through a set of pre-designed skins I could wear. It's really, it's like a tickle. It's like this, just something, that's
Dare I say,
lightly motivating you.
dare I say a flavor of slow.
A flavor of slow. Oh, okay. Yeah. Flavor of slow. The flavor of slow in the second moon is premonition. That is the flavor of slow. The premonition, the speed of premonition, isn't really the point. It's the attentiveness and listening that's really the point. So when we're talking about, you have to go slow enough to listen. So that's the direct pith answer. The flavor of slow is slow enough to listen. Okay. And then as you're listening and responsive to the omens of yin. So any fruition from Yang's ascension, any and all fruition of Yang's ascension, as it turns the corner in the spring equinox and starts overtaking the situation and rising up like this great sun, is deeply dependent on its capacity to be responsive to the omens of yin. Absolutely essential. Yeah. You just can't, push the situation forward and dominate. You'll burn it out, right? So you have to be in this kind of respiration with this perhaps serendipity experience. But this premonition is to basically stay in this open space, stay in the conversation. And if you're able to do that well, then you're just kind of guided and you're able to adapt. That's why adaptation is the highest principle, the highest value in the Tongshu, is to adapt to the situation as it unfolds, to be responsive. And so you may have like this vision of like this very precise vision of what you want to be and how you want to transform. And it doesn't go, what do I say? Like life is what happens when you're making other plans, right? So so you go through this whole experience, which may actually carry some disappointment. And this is the time when disappointment really weighs on you, and the expectations that you have really, really weigh on you. Right?
It's hitting me now as you say that I'm a monkey, and so
very restless.
I adapt so well. But my son, who's an ox, characteristically may not have the agility or comfort in sudden shifts and adaptation. Right? So just speaking of expectations, it's I'm gonna teach my son with these
about his own expectations. Yeah. With an ox. Give it about 10 years. Consistent, slow, steady little lessons.
Well, here we are with our format. So,
well, let me finish the flavor of slow.
Okay, because this is supposed to be him.
I know,
but we'll work it out.
We'll work it out.
This is great. Great.
Which we're operating on a premonition. Like we are kind of loosely going the direction that it opens up. Like it has to meet you.
Yeah. Wherever we go, we're gonna look good.
It has, yeah, that too. But it has to meet you, right? So in a universe where everything is self-arising, you don't make anything happen, but you host the situation. That's what I was writing today. That you host the situation for it to self-arise, right? So we have to actually work with conditions such that is available, but obviously no guarantee. Right? So to be in a place of premonition is to be available to that kind of constant need for adaptation, and the Tongshu could be a big part of that. And then that's opposed to dropping into a place of fantasy where I'm only satisfied if I get this. And we become, very fixated on how we respond.
Oh, that's trouble.
Yeah. I mean, that's the basis for all violence and destruction, is the fixation of the fantasy that we want. And we may actually even succeed. That's what's even more troubling, is that we may actually succeed in fulfilling the fantasy, but it won't be ever as satisfying as we envisioned. That's the whole problem with fantasy. Is even if you strenuously applied yourself to the fantasy and broke the world and got what you wanted, you're automatically like lost. You've forgotten why you wanted it in the first place. So this is documented throughout all the wisdom. This is, essentially the definition of samsara and creating a ghostly situation, because you're obviously depleting yourself to the point that you just become a ghost, maybe even a living one, right? So stakes are high. Stakes are high.
Hey, talk shit, fucking ghost, get out of here.
I just bring that up to say because it's like really important pivot.
Well, King Ming's coming up too.
Yeah, the spring is actually, this is where we set all the precedents for our behavior.
Yeah.
If you think you're going to misconduct ourselves now, but then change ourselves in the summer, that's not the way it works.
Yeah, you think you're going to plant a mango and get a watermelon? Good luck.
Good luck. And that is very good.
Hey, Master One collection. Available in our premium tea club.
Just cultivating relatedness here.
Because we're doing the tea club, which you're a part of.
Yes, I highly recommend the tea club. I highly recommend the tea club.
We're upping it. So now I'm going to work exclusively with Pure Land Teas and Anoa for the Master One collection. And so every month, a brick of Big Snow Mountain.
Wow.
A brick of, and exclusively pu'er. And instead of month after month after month, no, for this quarter, every month, you're just going to get this tea.
Oh, cool.
And cultivate
a certain kind of,
and build your relationship and get to, then we'll meet once a month and talk about the brewing parameters and fun we're having and breakthroughs and revelations we're having with it.
Did you guys hear that? That sounds pretty good.
That's the new iteration of the tea club that we're trying to work with.
Yeah. That sounds really cool.
And you'll get to drink these specific teas.
And then you can just watch the video and drink the tea, and it's like you're here.
You won't look as good though.
No. You'll look better. Some of you will look better. So when we're talking about the trines, so in Chinese astrology, there are 4 groups of 3. So there are 12 earthly branches, and we're going to talk about how the earthly branches do typically, stereotypically, within the framework of the second moon of spring, the rabbit moon. So those 4 groups go, we'll start with the first one, which is rat, dragon, and monkey. And those 3, actually, we'll start with the domestics. Those are a bit more complicated. The ones that do both the best and the worst, let's put it like that, are the domestics. Because this is a domestic moon, that means that they're all the domestics are much more empowered, but they're also, but it also means a lot more how those relationships unfold. And the domestics are the pig, the rabbit, and the goat. And I would also throw in the dog. So all 4 of those, but especially that trine of the pig, the rabbit, and the goat, do very well in this moon because they are interdependent by nature. And because they're domestics, just as the name implies, they need to work together to feel empowered. So rabbits are the most sensitive of the 3, but those 3 basically they feel to have more at stake this moon, which means they can do very, very well, or if their conditions are somewhat sketchy in terms of their interpersonal relationships, they're going to feel it much more, so they have more at stake, but they're also empowered to really get some kind of clarity or some sort of premonition around how their relationships are working. And that's when we move to the second trine, when we'll go back to the rat, the monkey, and the dragon, they're also somewhat empowered in that kind of assessment way, but they're less attached to how those things work or don't work for them. The rat is more interdependent than, say, the monkey or the dragon, who have a lot more adaptability and fluidity with how they interact with other people. So even if it's not working for them, the monkey and the dragon, they can work with it, right? But they will remember how those alliances flowed or didn't flow, right? So there is a way in which the building of alliances and the development of trust is absolutely a necessity for some earthly branches and not a necessity, as much of a necessity for others. And it may actually feel like a hindrance because they have to spend time building alliances when they would rather be out doing things. So aggression is certainly not, it's not the best technique, you know, in the second moon. You want to actually be in a place of courtship, which is more about persuasion. It's more about coaxing a situation forward rather than trying to aggressively push it forward. You want to be pulled along. You don't want to be pushed. So the rat can join the domestics a little bit, but they're more flexible in their social arrangements. So they're both, I think rats do fairly well this moon if they can stay out of sticky emotional situations. That would kind of bog them down. But in terms of just the fluidity of being social, there's no one better really than the rat this moon. And you could say the same thing about the dragon, but they're not really fully dropped in yet. I wouldn't expect to see the dragons be particularly, you know, much more active on an intimate level. But in terms of like making their presence felt and making an impact, dragons are still relatively checked out. So a lot of the kind of negotiation of emotional relatedness isn't necessarily a top on the dragon's priority. But you know, they can do it. But if it feels like draining or like too much of a demand for them, they may disappear on you. And as far as the monkeys are concerned, they have a similar vibe to the dragon, but the recommendation for monkeys is to sit still and don't make any changes. Just ride this one out. When it comes to the ox, the snake, and the rooster. So oxen are family by nature. So again, like the monkey, I wouldn't recommend that ox really makes any changes. And if anything, they're going more insular. They're going like into more intimate spaces, things that are tighter relationships. So that would be the recommendation for oxen right now, is like kind of spend more time with your family than working too much. And then as far as the snake is concerned, this is a great time to meet people. Excellent time for snakes to meet people, especially in this moon. So that brings up all kinds of complications, I know, but you should still do it and negotiate it and navigate it to the best of your ability. You'll find out a lot about yourself. It doesn't really matter how things go. It's more about like what you learn in the process. So I highly recommend snakes to get out there and sort of rub elbows, get out of your comfort zone, which I know some snakes are doing. So, and then in terms of the rooster, rooster sees the second moon of spring as more like meandering. You know, there's a temptation in the second moon to kind of drop into, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? And the rooster's in the one in the back of the car going, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? So roosters can feel very impatient this moon. So you just have to write it out. There's a lot of, if they can do things that are kind of interesting for them in an experimentation way, that's a good way to stay engaged without, you know, needing to drop into too much complexity. Yeah, it's gonna feel like people are wasting their time for roosters right now. So just be patient, because right around the corner, things are gonna start picking up pretty quickly. So you want to have your ducks in a row in terms of who your support is. That would be the highest priority for roosters, knowing who has your back. and make the list small. It doesn't matter, but like have a list of who has your back, because it's good for roosters to have support right now. And the last, we talked about the dog already. They're definitely much more loyal. So their loyalty, there's vulnerability for both dog and pig, in terms of how their loyalty is expressed, and whether or not their loyalty is misplaced. And dogs are particularly vulnerable this moon to that, whether or not their loyalty is misplaced. So I would say, like the rooster, and to some extent like the monkey, to kind of keep your circles conservative. Again, for dogs, because we're waiting for summer for you to kind of loosen up and start your recovery process from the dragon year, you don't want to like get into a complex emotional situation. Do not. I don't think it's a good idea for dogs. Pigs have a little bit more flexibility to them. Still not a great idea. And then horses and tigers are stereotypically the most aggressive of all the earthly branches. And so, I could sit up here and say, don't get aggressive. But it may not matter, what I say. You might already just be, pushing forward and finding yourself sort of depleted much sooner than you would expect. So get some friends, hang out with friends, prioritize soft power over hard power, and really develop that. I mean, for the most part, both of the tiger and the horse are sort of waiting for the horse year. So this is a very good time to experiment, and with intimacy, experiment with like how you open up to others in this second moon of spring, and don't put a lot on it. It's just be relaxed, in the expression. And I think that's true for all of the 12, how you relate to others and how you develop intimacy is kind of right on the surface of things, and who you engage with is similarly, right on the surface. So there's a lot of depth, to that process. And I would recommend everybody in their own particular way kind of engage with what it's like to feel close to others and to build trust. Probably booking clients.
Yeah.
Because these are the days, like once you get, especially as you get close to the equinox, and then move from the equinox to towards summer, then that's a really good time to talk to astrologers and diviners.
Yeah.
So everybody's gonna be like, yeah. So Megan would be like, okay, start answering the phone.
Yeah, people want to make sense of the last year and get some insight on the next year.
It's just that the chi is available, right? Yeah. Like, because if you think about the inhibitions of winter, it makes transmission more difficult. Mm-hmm. Like in the middle of winter, I could tell it's on blue in the face, like try to get something across to a client, and then be like, okay, let me think about it. But like when it comes to spring, everything is enlivened, everything is excited. And that includes like our connection to each other. Yeah. So we can more easily be available to that kind of transmission. So that's the reason why, it's good to not work in the winter, because it takes you twice as long and more energy to actually get the same job done, no matter what you're doing. Yeah, so he'd be seeing clients, probably having classes.
Yeah. What's funny is that as I asked that question, a little whisper in my ear, selling incense. Big would be selling incense right now.
And rice cookers. Yeah. Incense and rice cookers. Miss you, yeah. Big. Oh man. Yeah. I couldn't even imagine what would be that's like what we'd be thinking right now.
He actually laughed at my jokes too.
Good stuff.
Yeah, that's special.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's mostly it when you're talking about the rabbit. Keeping things simple. Yeah. Simple is best. Not really get too complicated. Okay.
This is also where we would do our Q&As and hexagram for Connie.
Connie. Oh.
Maybe Chani, you have a question for us too?
I'm not ready.
No, okay.
Not ready. She's not ready. One of my favorite hexagrams for the season is 31, which is wiggling in the toes.
I like to wiggle.
Yeah.
Oh, I could have made a qigong for that.
You still can. But it just speaks to the way in which inspiration moves through the body. And when when you know you're ready, I think that's the interesting thing when we're talking about premonition and fantasy. The question might be, well, how do you know? Like how can you tell the difference between the two? And because we're not, external validation, this is not a cosmology with a creator. So there is no, in this cosmology, there's no appetite for an external validation, meaning like, I'm not looking outside my own experience, right? I'm actually trying to find the answer within my own experience as a human being. So that requires a notion participating in practices that are centered around an idea of what a human being is, first and foremost, like that you actually have that as a topic of dialogue and exchange. That's called culture, right? There's difference between, being a part of a culture of humanity, and being, essentially an uncultured brute that is not, which is what we are, right? That's just straight up, like, that's what we are. Like all our language, basically lends itself to this notion of validation through external means. Even if it's like something that you project in your inner state, right? But you can kind of develop this capacity for exploring your own appetite. That is possible. That's what hexagram 31 is about, is like feeling the first wiggle of inspiration in the toes to the knees and the hips, and then into the heart, and it's moving, and then it goes up out of the head and gone, right? So even the hexagram would suggest this kind of seasonal, and there's a good time to kind of practice that. And the spring is the best time. This moon right now, like right now. Come on down, lower your appetite. Like the first moon is a little wonky, right? So you can do it, but there's probably not a whole lot of benefit there. It's easily going to be forgotten. But in the second moon, it's really about how your appetites can express and then find familiarity with to the right and to the left of you, to the tradition that you've inherited. How do you fold this back into convention? Like, how does this remind you of what other people have gone through? How can you make connections and build rapport based on just this? And it requires like human connection, where I'm like, I'm struggling with this, and somebody else says, me too. And then you have wise elders that basically say, yeah, this is what I did, and then you have this building of rapport, and that's alliance, that's trust, you build trust that way.
Well, I also like this image of wiggling the toes, because as we're into spring, we're phasing out of that kind of sleep-in season, and spring, hey, get up with the rising sun. Right. And we may still be drowsy because of the cold, the mornings are still cold. We just had daylight savings, it's a little slower, right? And so wiggling the toes is a great hack for if you have a hard time getting up in the morning. You're a constant snooze bar slapper. Wiggle your toes, scratch your scalp, and because basically all your blood's in your liver at night for processing. That's a spring thing too, liver, right? Liver. And so if you can't wake up in the morning, it's because there's no blood anywhere else. Right. So wiggle your toes, get the blood to your extremities, scratch your scalp, get the blood to your brain. It'll wake you up faster than sleeping.
And all those practices of circulation, right? Like to once you're up, and getting yourself moving. Yeah, very important. So the hexagram 31, also 4, which is just about immaturity.
It's all about me today.
And 9 9 is a good one, and that is like, don't have enough power. Yeah, so like, don't pretend like you do. But then also, I mean, I'll keep stacking them on. 51. 51's important right now in this moment because it's shock. It's this arousal that we're kind of rustled. We're like taken out of our slumber. Like, it's like hitting the snooze bar a bunch of times and then realizing you're 30 minutes late. Like, so it's like relax, remain calm, work with it as best you can, adapt, right? Not get too rigid.
So in the streets, we have a phrase, game, recognize game. And I say that to say this. Earlier, I was quoting Confucius, and one thing that Confucius said was, if I had 50 more years, I'd dedicate it to studying I Ching.
Yeah.
And so
yeah,
you blow me away with your capacity to be like, oh yeah, this stuff, oh yeah, this stuff, oh yeah, this stuff, oh yeah, this stuff. Hold on, dude. Like, straight line yang, broken line yin.
Well, it's in the Tongshu every day, right? So I see
way to rub it in.
I see these. You can,
yeah,
you
you
too.
Idiot, you blind, you see it's there every
Can
day.
see the hexagrams every
you
day.
too can study this material. See how he slaps me? This is my big brother. This is his way of calling me dumb.
Some of you actually said earlier about that, like, was like perfect to the season, actually. And this is what it was. It was, you were talking about that quote from Confucius that really got your attention as a young man. Would you repeat it?
Yeah. Isn't it great to practice what we've learned? Isn't it great to see friends from afar? Right. And it's implied, it doesn't say, but it's implied, when you see friends from afar, you share a meal.
Right. And like your first reaction to that was like,
oh yeah, 13 years old, like, share a meal? Wow, family, that sucks.
Yeah.
Practice something? Oh, hell no. But now I'm 45. I turned 45 this year.
So that 13-year-old boy is where we are right now. Oh. Yeah. Is that place of like,
don't be lazy.
Is that place of like,
stop playing video games.
I don't wanna, like, no
more Doritos.
Yeah, it's that kind of like impulsive, disobedient, self-centered kind of attitude, because the youth don't have a context for their experience. They think they're the only ones who've ever felt this way. Whereas it's our responsibility to be like, yeah, no. I get where you're coming from, kid, but like, you're not alone in this, and that's why tradition or convention, why the classics are so important right now, is that we come to recognize that our situation is not special, but also not alone. It's unique in the sense it's your embodiment, but you can then put it in a context of relatedness, and then it doesn't become a place for division or conflict. You can actually utilize that energy to build a connection. So
it's my big brother.
I got the white hair to prove it.
That's a good spot, as good a spot as any.
Yeah.